Caring Review, print speaking to the blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the Glasgow Times Podcast, recorded at the Bishop Briggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @QandReview. That is @ CUEANDREVIEW. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@cuenreview.com. That is INFORMATION @CUEANDREVIEW.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
The Glasgow Times, 16th of April. News. Airdrie swimming pool reopens after major refurbishment. By Nicole Mitchell. A swimming pool has reopened following a major refurbishment after closing in December 2024. The John Smith swimming pool in Airdrie has been welcoming back swimmers since Monday, April 13th, following the extensive upgrade. Improvements include a full replacement of the movable pool floor, new tiling around the pool tank and regrouting of the pool floor. There are also new accessible pool stairs, a refurbished filtration system and improvements to the water treatment and heating systems. Heather Liddell, Active and Creative Communities Manager with North Lanarkshire Council, said, "It's great to have the pool back and open and see familiar faces returning. This is an important community space and the improvements will make a real difference to everyone who uses it, whether that's for fitness, lessons or just a bit of fun." The pool will now also have more evening public swimming sessions. Before its temporary closing, most evenings after 6:30 were set aside for clubs. However, the new timetable gives opportunities for families and casual swimmers to access the pool during the evening. The pool will be opening Monday to Thursday from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m, Fridays from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m, and weekends from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Public swimming will continue at weekends until 1:30 p.m, after which club sessions will take place. The health suite and gym remain open throughout all operating hours. By Nicole Mitchell. Read by Gordon Brown. The Glasgow Times, 16th of April. News. Jordan Hill School named Best in Scotland for 10th year in a row. By Aidan Maxwell. Scotland's top performing secondary schools have been named in a new league table, with a Glasgow school once again taking the national crown. The Times has published its annual list of the best state high schools ranked on the proportion of youngsters leaving with 5 hires at grades A to C and 5 or more national 5s. Schools in plush parts of Glasgow's West End, East Dunbartonshire and East Renfrewshire dominate the top of the 2026 rankings. Jordan Hill School in Glasgow took the top spot with 91% of pupils leaving with the gold standard exam grades. It is the 10th year in a row Jordan Hill is ranked number 1 for schools across the country. St Ninian's, Mearns Castle and William Wood High School in East Renfrewshire took 2nd, 3rd and 4th place. Beauclair Academy and Bearsden Academy in East Dunbartonshire ranked 5th and 6th with a score of 79%. Linlithgow Academy in West Lothian ranked 7th, followed by Boroughmuir High in Edinburgh, with Douglas Academy in East Dunbartonshire in 9th on 75%, and Old Macker Academy in Aberdeen completing the top 10. Edinburgh University Professor Lindsay Patterson said, "Parents' interest in league tables is quite different from the interests of politicians and the wider society. Parents very reasonably want to know if a school has a studious atmosphere among other desirable things. That is quite well reflected in the raw proportion of leavers who have high qualifications. So a parent can inspect a league table and, if feasible, select a studious school regardless of how that studiousness was achieved. Denying parents this capacity, as Scottish policymakers try to do, is unfair. By Aidan Maxwell. Read by Gordon Brown. Glasgow Times, 16th of April. News. Man arrested over 15 bogus workman offences in Glasgow's West End. By Aidan Maxwell. A man has been arrested and charged after a series of bogus workman incidents in Glasgow's West End. Police say a 65-year-old man has been held in custody for court in connection with 15 alleged offences linked to reports of a bogus window cleaner targeting residents. The charges include theft, fraud and robbery, following complaints that a man was offering window cleaning services in the area. Officers from the Partick Community Policing Team have thanked victims and witnesses for their help during what they described as an intensive inquiry. They are urging anyone who has concerns about potential bogus callers in their community to report it to police. A Police Scotland spokesman said a 65-year-old male had been arrested, charged and held in custody for 15 offences in relation to complaints of a bogus workman offering window cleaning services in the West End of Glasgow. The offences include theft, fraud and robbery. The Partick Community Policing Team would like to thank the victims and witnesses for their cooperation in this extensive inquiry. By Aidan Maxwell. Read by Gordon Brown. Glasgow Times, 16th of April. News. Scotland named UK's highest for accidental deaths. By Aidan Maxwell. Scotland had the highest rate of accidental deaths compared with other UK countries, new data has revealed. Falls remained the leading cause of accidental deaths in the UK in 2023, as the overall rate of fatalities and hospital admissions from accidents rose. More than 23,000 people lost their lives because of accidents in 2023, while almost 900,000 people were admitted to hospital. In 2023-24, a report by the Royal Society for the Prevention of Accidents, ROSPA, said, the figures represent an 8% increase in accidental death rates and a 3% rise in the rate of accident-related hospital admissions over 1 year, according to the charity. Almost half, 48% of accidental deaths in 2023, resulted from falls, and more than a quarter, 27%, were caused by poisoning, both marginally up from 2022 figures. More than half, 59%, of all accident-related hospital admissions were because of falls. Falls from stairs and steps were the most commonly identified cause of fall-related deaths, but data quality issues mean the vast majority, 83% of the deaths, were recorded as unspecified. For poisonings, although they made up more than a quarter of accidental deaths, they only accounted for 3% of hospital admissions from accidents, with ROSPA highlighting their particularly high lethality. Almost a tenth, 9%, of all accidental poisoning and substance-related deaths were connected to alcohol. The largest share of hospital admissions within the category, almost a quarter, was for medications commonly available over the counter and by prescription, including paracetamol and ibuprofen. Deaths from dog bites increased, rising from 6 in 2022 to 20 in 2023. The category the cause falls under, being hit, struck or bitten by people or animals, made up less than 1% of accidental deaths. The rates in England were at their highest in the North East, while London was found to be the safest region in the UK for fatalities from accidents. The data follows social and demographic patterns, the report said. Men experienced higher rates of accidental injury and death compared with women, and older people faced a disproportionately high number of serious injuries and deaths, particularly as a result of falls. It also said people living in more deprived areas consistently face higher rates of death and hospital admissions from accidents, with poorer housing conditions and higher risks at work among contributing factors. Accidents have a tragic impact not just on individuals, families and communities, but society as a whole, Rospa said. Immediate treatment costs to the NHS run to £6 billion annually, not including follow-up, rehab and other costs, and accidents account for a minimum of 5.2 million bed days, reducing capacity and driving up waiting lists across the health service. Becky Hickman, head of ROSPA, said, "Accidents devastate lives in an instant. They are often sudden, violent and shocking, leaving families and communities to cope with consequences that can last a lifetime. What makes this devastation even harder to bear is the knowledge that so many of these incidents are entirely preventable. Our annual review of accidents shows we are still not doing enough to reduce avoidable harm, life-changing injuries and personal tragedies. People in Britain are at increasing and unacceptable risk of suffering a serious accident, and it is those who are already vulnerable, young children, the elderly and people in deprived communities, who are in the greatest danger. By learning from patterns of injury and acting on the evidence, we can help ensure that individuals, communities and wider society are better protected from the consequences of accidental injury." ROSPA called on the government to introduce a national accident prevention strategy, improve accident monitoring and address existing gaps in the collation of data, develop a stronger focus on preventing accidents to ease the burden on hospitals and social care, target prevention work at high-risk groups and improve safety in everyday environments. By Aidan Maxwell. Read by Gordon Brown. Glasgow Times, 17th of April. News. Box Fresh owner on impact of rising fuel prices in Glasgow. Exclusive by Emily Moore. Roadworks on the M8, rising energy prices, the cost of living crisis and COVID-19 have all caused some of the hardest years for local businesses to survive, according to a Glasgow entrepreneur. Chris Ward has been running Box Fresh in Palmadie for 6 years and built more than 52,000 followers on Instagram. But despite this, he says he's close to calling it quits on multiple occasions due to mounting pressures on companies across the city. The 39-year-old, whose brand cleans and repairs trainers for customers across the region, made the decision to start charging £5 for delivery services, something they've never had to do before because of the rocketing price of fuel. Speaking to the Glasgow Times, he said, "I think since COVID-19 there's always been something when you don't catch a break. There's always something happening that's impacting business. There are wars going on, like the war in Ukraine increased the electricity bills, and now we have the war in Iran. Our couriers were saying how difficult it was, first of all, to get fuel for their cars because some places had no fuel left and were rationing it. Now there's an increase in prices." However, Chris says this is not the only thing they've had to compete with. Due to the location of his store, which is located off the M74, most of his customers choose to drive to Palmadie to hand in and collect their trainers. However, when major bridge improvement works commenced on the M8 between Hillington and Govan, Chris says there was a drop in customers from day one. He said, "We've not been as busy since the road work started. That's a fact. Anyone coming from the south side or Renfrewshire can be travelling up to an hour to get here, whereas you could normally do it in 10 or 15 minutes. There would be customers who would come here often but are being put off because they don't want to have to sit in traffic at peak times." Reflecting on his time running Box Fresh and some of his other business ventures, Chris says there's been times when he wondered if the mounting pressures were too much. With customers spending less and prices soaring, he says running the business can be a nightmare. He added, "If I knew what I know now, I wouldn't have started a business. It's so difficult. It's a sign of the times as well that retailers have taken a massive hit. It's just increase after increase. You get water bills, electricity, rent, which is quite high. You have to juggle all of that. It's a nightmare trying to run a business at the moment." A spokesperson for Amy, the company who maintain the South West Trunk Road network on behalf of Transport Scotland, say the roadworks on the M8 don't impact travel to Polmadie. They said the ongoing bridge refurbishment works on the M8 at Hillington do not directly impact primary routes serving Polmadie. Traffic flow has been maintained in both directions throughout the project, with a reduced speed limit in place to ensure public and road worker safety, as well as maintaining access to businesses across the Hillington area. Any road closures required have been planned with a later start time to mitigate disruption to shoppers, and we provide advance notice of each phase of the project to help road users plan their journeys. The next important date for road users to be aware is the upcoming total weekend closure of the M8 Junction 26 westbound slip road from 9 p.m. on Friday 8th of May until 6 a.m. on Monday 11th of May, with the project on schedule to complete as advertised by Sunday 31st of May. Exclusive by Emily Moore. Read by Gordon Brown. The Glasgow Times, 17th of April. News. Glasgow Housing Association hits out after gardens vandalised. By Nicole Mitchell. A housing association in Glasgow has hit out after a community garden project was targeted by vandals. New Gorbals Housing Association has said it is extremely disappointed after a new project from Gorbal Grows called McNeil Gardens was vandalised. In a post shared on Facebook, the housing association revealed plants were stolen and planters were vandalised, and said the incident was extremely upsetting for volunteers involved in the project, which was voted for by the community. The post continued, Gorbal Grows received funding from the Gorbals Ideals Fund 2025, which has already involved local primary school children who had sown pumpkin seeds that they were looking forward to reaping for Halloween. The project is run entirely by volunteers who give up their time and expertise to bring gardening and growing skills to the community at no cost. The Gorbal Grows project has successfully operated in Riverside for more than 2 years, which makes this vandalism all the more upsetting. One person called the incident shocking. By Nicole Mitchell. Read by Gordon Brown. The Glasgow Times, 17th of April. News. Mystery still surrounds death of Glasgow lawyer 40 years on. Exclusive by Anne Fotheringham. It is a case that is still deliberated over today, more than 40 years after the events took place. Some believe there's much more to the death of Willie McRae, a lawyer and independence campaigner who lived in Glasgow in the 1980s. Police officers called to the scene of a road accident in a remote part of the Highlands found the former SNP vice chairperson unconscious on remote moorland of the A87 on April the 5th, 1985. 2 Australian tourists found his maroon Volvo lying over a burn at Bunloin near Glenmoriston and had called the emergency services. He was rushed to hospital where nurses discovered he had suffered a gunshot wound to the head. Sadly, he died in hospital. Police found the gun used lying in the burn where the car had rested and discovered it was an unlicensed Smith & Wesson revolver belonging to McRae. A police investigation concluded he had taken his own life and no fatal accident inquiry was held at the request of the family. Afterwards, as more details came to light, people began to ask questions about the events surrounding Willie's death. It was alleged he had been under surveillance by both the police and intelligence services at the time. In the early 1980s, he'd been a key figure in a campaign against the United Kingdom Atomic Energy Authority plans to dispose of nuclear waste in the Galloway Hills. Willie had told friends that both his office and flat had been broken into in the past, and papers, he claimed, showed evidence of plans to bury all of the UK's nuclear waste near Applecross in Scotland had been stolen. Just before he made the 175-mile drive to his holiday home in Dorney on Good Friday 1985, a serious fire had damaged its Glasgow flat. Persistent claims that Willie had been the victim of foul play and a cover-up prompted a reinvestigation of the case in 2016, and 2 experienced former detectives were hired to speak to original witnesses from the time. However, no new evidence undermining the official verdict was found. In 2022, a true crime podcast set up by the Glasgow Times to look at the city's biggest cold cases featured quotes from 2 people who came forward with witness accounts backing claims that there was more to his death than met the eye. A former forklift truck driver claimed he had rescued Willie from his burning flat in a confrontation with a boiler-suited man. Additionally, a police officer who attended the same flat fire also said his report was ignored by colleagues investigating his death. The episode also includes an account from Willie's colleague and former criminal lawyer Len Murray, who said he was convinced his friend did take his own life. By Anne Fotheringham. Read by Gordon Brown. The Glasgow Times, 17th of April. News. Work starts on building 142 homes at Hamilton's Bell College site. By Amy Miles. Work has started on a multi-million-pound project to build more than 100 new homes on the site of the former Bell College. The £42 million development, led by house builder Keepmoat, will deliver 142 properties on the site of the landmark. Of these, 36 will be affordable homes delivered in partnership with South Lanarkshire Council. Tim Metcalfe, Regional Managing Director at Keepmoat Scotland, said, "At Keepmoat we're committed to breathing new life into brownfield sites and creating well-connected, multi-tenure communities, and our significant investment at Hamilton is testament to that. As a partnership first house builder, we're proud to be delivering affordable homes alongside South Lanarkshire Council to create much-needed accessible options. It's great to see work start on this site as it prepares to transform a disused area in the town. The development will include a mix of apartments, terraced, semi-detached and detached houses. It will also feature pedestrian routes, play areas and green spaces. The 36 council homes, which will include properties designed for tenants with specific needs, will be jointly funded by the Council and the Scottish Government through the Affordable Housing Supply Programme. Stephen Gibson, Executive Director of Housing and Technical Resources at South Lanarkshire Council, said, "These affordable homes will be a welcome addition to the Council's housing stock and will help meet the varying needs of people across Hamilton. We are determined to provide residents across the council area with high quality homes, and that is exactly what will be provided through this partnership with Keepmoat. I am delighted to see the work beginning that will revitalise what has been a derelict site in a prime location, and I am looking forward to seeing the genuine difference it will bring to people's lives." The site was previously home to Hamilton Barracks before being converted into a college campus, which was later sold by the University of the West of Scotland. Keepmoat has delivered more than 35,000 homes across the UK to date. We reported in 2024 that the landmark is being torn down after more than 50 years in Hamilton. The former university building officially closed in 2018 as students moved to a new £110 million Lanarkshire campus based in Hamilton International Technology Park. By Amy Miles, read by Gordon Brown.
Glasgow Times News on Monday the 20th of April. Les Miserables star meets fans after his Glasgow Royal Concert Hall show. An article written by Aidan Maxwell. Fans in Glasgow were treated to a surprise meet and greet after Saturday's show at the Royal Concert Hall as the headline act stopped to sign autographs. Alfie Boe is an English tenor best known for his acclaimed turn as Jean Valjean in Les Miserables and for his hit albums and tours with Michael Ball. He's become one of the UK's most popular classical crossover performers, moving between musical theatre anthems, operatic favourites and reworked pop songs. His Facing Myself UK tour stop in Glasgow featured fan favourites alongside new material from his latest album, showcasing the powerful vocals that have earned him a devoted following on stage and on screen. Alfie Boe was famously discovered singing on the factory floor of a Lancashire car garage before going on to study at the Royal College of Music and the Royal Opera House, winning a Tony Award for his Broadway debut in Baz Luhrmann's production of La Bohème in 2003. An article written by Aidan Maxwell. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 20th of April. Concerns over cars still causing high levels of emissions in Glasgow. An article written by Catherine Hunter. Concerns that traffic in the city is causing one of the highest levels of carbon dioxide emissions in Glasgow have been raised by a local councillor. During a meeting of the Net Zero Committee, Councillor Chris Cunningham highlighted that according to the most recent report, transport is the second highest emitting sector, despite reductions in emissions. Councillor Cunningham also raised concerns about the number of cars in Glasgow, including electric vehicles, and asked how the council was progressing in ways to get more people to use active travel methods. It comes as an update on the Council's climate plan, which represents a citywide approach to address the climate emergency and to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2030, was presented to the committee. Councillor Cunningham said, "I want to query the issue around transport, and the report quite correctly highlights that transport is the second highest emitting sector, and although reductions have been achieved, the pace has been slower than needed. Sadly, and this is not a criticism of either the council or of officers, we haven't bucked the trend. If I'm looking at that issue, then obviously there's a question of increasing and improving public transport to take people out of their cars and to put them onto public transport. There is an issue about increasing and improving active travel so that more people are walking or cycling and they're getting out of their cars. I'd like to explore the emissions that are coming from vehicles. I'd be grateful for officers' views on this because it strikes me that we continue to have, unless I'm mistaken, a growth in the number of vehicles on the roads, but a very significant growth in the number of electric vehicles on the road. On a win-lose basis, where are we winning on that and where are we losing? Is the increased number of cars on the road exceeding the increased proportion of electric vehicles on the road? And what is all of that doing in terms of the emissions issue? I'm conscious that there is a separate debate that an electric vehicle doesn't do anything in terms of traffic. It takes up the same space as any other car. The question I have is whether or not we are winning or losing in electric vehicles more than counterbalancing the increase in the amount of traffic on the road. Council officers confirmed that the climate plan looks at ways to improve bus and rail networks by working with Transport Scotland, Strathclyde Passenger Transport and ScotRail. An officer said, "I think anecdotally it's fairly safe to say that electric vehicles haven't quite picked up as much as we would have liked in terms of sales. There are definitely more of them on the road, but as a comparison against the number of fossil-fuelled vehicles, it's nowhere near enough, and that's been in part due to the specific nature of a lot of the housing stock in Glasgow, and it's very difficult for a lot of people to own an electric vehicle. We've discussed before about the charging infrastructure, and there is work going on across the city region now in terms of developing that charging infrastructure, which will hopefully make it more available to everyone in the city, which might encourage more uptake. An article written by Catherine Hunter. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 20th of April. The titanic scale of the fly tipping issue is revealed. An exclusive article written by Amanda Keenan. Glasgow has cleared the equivalent weight of 15 Titan cranes in fly-tip waste in the last 4 years. The amount of illegally dumped rubbish collected across the city has surged, with almost 12,000 tonnes uplifted since 2022. Figures released through a Freedom of Information request to Glasgow City Council revealed that more than 6,000 tonnes has been collected by the cash-strapped local authority in the last full financial year alone. The data shows 580 tonnes of illegally dumped waste were collected in 2022 to 2023. This rose sharply to 4,324 tonnes in 2023 to 2024 and climbed again to 6,237 tonnes in 2024 to 2025. So far in this year, 2025 to 2026, 937 tonnes have already been removed. The iconic crane in Clydebank weighs around 800 tonnes. Despite this spiralling problem, the council has confirmed that it's unable to provide a specific figure for the cost of clearing the fly-tipping sites, as the work is carried out as part of its wider street cleaning service. The local authority has no dedicated team solely responsible for removing illegally dumped waste. Instead, fly tipping is dealt with by a combination of street scene, neighbourhood and deep clean teams, often using the same vehicles and crews deployed for routine litter collection and bin emptying. Officials say that this integrated approach means that a single crew may handle multiple tasks during a shift, including street bin collection, litter picking and the removal of dumped items. As a result, costs are not recorded separately for each activity. The situation is further complicated by the need to handle certain types of waste separately due to legal requirements. Items classified as pollutants, as well as upholstered seating such as dumped armchairs and sofas, must be transported and disposed of through specialist routes. Despite the lack of a dedicated fly-tipping budget, the council has outlined the overall cost of its street cleansing operations. The total actual expenditure for 2024 to 2025 stood at £20.4 million, against a budget of £23.2 million. For 2025 to 2026, the allocated budget has risen to £25.9 million. However, local authority chiefs say that investment in frontline services allowed for the creation of deep clean teams in all 23 council wards and dedicated neighbourhood teams. Spending is primarily organised by depot locations, including Anderston, Dorsholme, Polmadie, Shield Hall and others, as well as a separate allocation for night shift operations. However, none of these categories isolate fly-tipping activity. Specialist contractors may also occasionally be brought in to deal with hazardous or complex fly-tipping incidents, depending on the location and nature of the waste. Again, there is no specific figure for this spend. While the numbers provide an overview of the scale of investment in keeping Glasgow streets clean, the absence of a standalone fly-tipping cost has raised questions, as the city continues to struggle with illegal dumping. Drumchapel and Annisland councillor Paul Carey says that his ward is one of the places hardest hit. He said, "This is a problem that seems to be growing year on year across the city, and is certainly one that is on the rise here. It's perhaps time that we look at a dedicated team which is individually funded and properly equipped to deal with these incidents, as opposed to them becoming the responsibility of an already stretched street cleansing department. I certainly think that it would be useful for the local authority to try and break down and isolate what's actually being spent tackling fly tipping, to get a true handle on what it's costing the city and the taxpayer." Union bosses say that the issue has gradually worsened because of people no longer being able to afford bulk uplift charges for items like beds, sofas and fridges amid the cost of living crisis. A council spokesperson told the Glasgow Times that tackling fly tipping across the city remains a firm priority. They added, following last year's budget decision to invest £7 million in frontline services, we recruited 150 additional street cleansing staff and also brought in new waste enforcement officers. This investment allowed for the creation of deep clean teams in all 23 council wards and dedicated neighbourhood teams that can respond quickly to local environmental issues all across the city. Tackling fly tipping and those responsible for creating environmental blight in our communities is a top priority for the council. Wherever we find evidence that identifies culprits, we will take enforcement action. We also work closely with partners such as SEPA and Police Scotland to ensure that unscrupulous fly tippers are brought to book. Information from the communities affected by fly tipping can also play a vital role by providing evidence that allows us to serve £500 fixed penalty notices to culprits. Residents must also ensure that they use firms properly licensed with SEPA to dispose of the excess waste, or they may also face enforcement action. There is no reason to fly tip when residents can request the council to uplift large, bulky waste for just £5 per item. A wide range of waste can also be disposed of free of charge at our household waste and recycling centres, which are open 7 days per week. An exclusive article written by Amanda Keenan. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 20th of April. A Glasgow tourist has life-saving surgery after a horrific scooter crash in Bali. An article written by Aidan Maxwell. A Glasgow tourist has undergone life-saving surgery after a horror scooter crash in Bali left him fighting for his life. Ewan Kay, who's 26 and from Newton Mearns, suffered 2 bleeds on the brain, multiple dislodged fractures and serious facial injuries after coming off his scooter during torrential rain on the 15th of April. Doctors warned his family that he only had a 30 to 70% chance of survival unless he underwent emergency neurosurgery. Relatives launched an online GoFundMe appeal to raise money for the urgent operation after being told that his travel insurance would not cover the costs of his treatment. Hundreds of donors have now given more than £40,000 towards his care, which is more than double the original £20,000 target set by the family. The family have since confirmed that the University of Strathclyde graduate has undergone an 8-hour operation to stop the brain bleeds. He's now described as being in a stable condition in intensive care, where medics are monitoring him closely and working to reduce the swelling. Posting an update to the fundraiser, his sister Nicola said, "The neurosurgeon is happy with the operation. He's managed to stabilise things and stop the bleeds. He's reassured us that this should resolve itself now. It's just monitoring and keeping a close eye on him." Further surgery is expected to repair Ewan's broken bones with plates and screws once his condition allows. Ewan had been in Bali for a short holiday before flying home to Glasgow after spending a year in Australia. He was wearing a helmet at the time of the crash, but suffered critical injuries when his scooter left the road during a torrential downpour. His mum Angela has now travelled out to be by his bedside in Bali. She said, "I can't believe the amount of support and generosity our family has received due to this terrible accident concerning Ewan. Knowing that I have financial backup through this Just Giving page means that I'm not stressed out about paying for the hospital and its medication and whatever other costs we need for his recovery. It's been such a wonderful show of support from all friends and family. I can't thank you all enough. I will update you all when I get to Bali and see Ewan. Thank you all again from the bottom of my heart." An article written by Aidan Maxwell. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 20th of April. The government is urged to stop United States military contracts. An article written by Gabriel Mackay. The Scottish Government has been urged to stop accepting blood money from the United States to use Prestwick Airport for refuelling missions, as it emerged that it's received more than £100 million in the last 10 years. The transport hub was taken into public ownership in 2013 and is run by an arm's-length company, Prestwick Airport Limited, on behalf of Holyrood. The airport continues to operate commercial flights, with routes to Spain, Portugal and Italy, but has increasingly relied on cargo flights and refuelling as it returned to profit. However, with a large proportion of the money earned by refuelling jets tied to the military, that pivot has proven controversial, with aircraft stopping at the airport before heading to the Middle East following the launch of the Iran war. In the year to date, according to United States federal government procurement records, the Department of Defense has spent $404,642 with Glasgow Prestwick Airport Limited and $5.11 million in the fiscal year to date, with the accounting period running from the 1st of October to the 30th of September. In 2025, it spent $20.49 million, up from $17.22 million in the previous fiscal year, with the highest total coming in the fiscal year 2023, when the department spent $26.92 million. In total, the Department of Defense has spent $141.21 million, which is equivalent to £104 million, since an indefinite delivery contract was signed between the department and Prestwick Airport in 2016. That contract expired in March of 2020 and was renewed in May of that year, before being renewed again last October. The current contract runs until the 31st of March 2030. In its latest set of accounts for 2024 to 2025, passenger services accounted for just 10% of revenue at Prestwick Airport, while fuel represented almost half at £24 million. The Scottish Government has argued that it cannot prevent military aircraft from a NATO ally using the airport as defence is reserved. However, campaigners have pointed to the example of Israel, when Prestwick Airport Limited was instructed not to accept contracts from the Israeli Defence Force, essentially a de facto ban. The First Minister, John Swinney, said last month, "If I was to prevent flights from entering Scotland by the appropriate steps, that would be necessary. I would need to exercise national security, aviation, air transport, defence and foreign affairs powers. These are all reserved to the UK government. I'd like to be able to exercise powers in this respect, but I would be exceeding my constitutional authority if I did. That's a matter of regret to me, but it's an issue that I'm continuing to explore in my pursuit of dialogue with the UK government." Patrick Harvey of the Scottish Green Party, who is standing on the party list in Glasgow, said, "We can't allow Scotland's publicly owned airport to be used as an outpost for the US military, when we have a Trump White House that has armed Israel's genocide against Palestinians in Gaza, inflicted a coup against Venezuela, and has waged an immoral and illegal war against Iran. It's vital that we stop these flights. When the United States is engaged in fascism at home and imperialism on the world stage, we all have a responsibility to act." The Scottish Government has tried to wash its hands of the matter, saying that it's out of their control. But when Russia invaded Ukraine, they took a clear stance, instructing all businesses to cut ties with President Putin's regime. If they can do that in Russia's case, they can put an end to a commercial relationship between an airport business that the Scottish Government itself owns and the rogue regimes in the United States and in Israel. Prestwick Airport and the SNP have both been approached for comment. An article written by Gabriel Mackay. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 20th of April. Lenzie Academy interest payments are to exceed its construction cost. An article written by Garrett Bayless-Stell. A council expects to spend more than £278 million repaying loans for a new school currently estimated to cost £138 million. Eastern Bartonshire Council expects to borrow £133.3 million to build a replacement for Lenzie Academy and to pay £145 million in interest on that sum over a 35-year repayment term. The expected interest payments are £7 million more than the estimated construction costs, and nearly 3 times the maximum contribution the council can receive from the Scottish Government's Learning Estate Investment Programme, or LEIP, which is helping to fund the project. LEIP is a £2 billion joint investment initiative administered by the Scottish Futures Trust, offering councils annual repayments over 25 years. Councils pay for the full project costs up front, and the LEIP funding, which can reach up to 50% of these costs, is conditional on councils meeting set targets. According to East Bartonshire Council documents, the maximum the council can recover from LEIP is £52.9 million. If the council receives all available funding, its total net cost for the school, including interest on repayments, will be around £225 million, approximately 63% more than the current estimated building cost. That estimate has already risen substantially in the years since the council applied to the LEIP programme. Eastern Bartonshire Council's initial bid to rebuild Lenzie Academy was submitted in October of 2022, and it costed the project at £85 million. It was approved in October 2023, and the council has moved ahead with planning at the chosen site at Whitegates Park. This site has been the source of controversy over the planning period, as local campaigners have raised concerns that the council is downplaying the potential contamination risks at the site and believe the site itself to be an inappropriate choice. Council officials previously declared that the site is unsuitable for school construction due to concerns over contamination. Detailed site investigations completed in February last year confirmed ground contamination at Whitegates Park, described in council reports as generating an additional and significant level of cost. A previous site investigation completed in 2018, 4 years before the bid was submitted, had already identified heavy metals, hydrocarbons and asbestos fibres in the soil. The materials, classified as hazardous waste, will cost approximately £4.8 million to be removed. A further £7.7 million has been added to the project for the redevelopment of the existing Lenzie Academy site on Myrtle Avenue. Our sister title, The Herald, asked the council to clarify whether the cost increase reflects a rise in LEIP eligible costs associated with the original bid, or whether elements had been added to the project that are not covered by the programme. Chief Executive Anne Davey said the level of funding made available for the Lenzie Academy rebuild project was based at a point-in-time cost analysis. Subsequent reports to the council have set out the additional costs associated with the project. The LEIP commitments remain at those agreed at the outset. Save Whitegates Park, the community group which has consistently opposed the council's choice of site for the new school, said that the figures raised serious questions about the project's financial management. The group said that it believed that the estimated cost per pupil had already exceeded comparable school projects elsewhere in Scotland, and called for a full public accounting of what had driven the increase. The scale of this cost escalation is impossible to ignore. There must be a clear and honest explanation from Eastern Bartonshire Council on what has driven these rising costs and whether earlier projections were ever realistic. The group also renewed its call for the council to reconsider alternative sites. Final estimates for the project are expected to be reported to the council in October of this year. As with many current school projects, the Lenzie Academy rebuild has already been subjected to delays, which may have a further impact on final construction costs and long-term interest payments. Construction on the new academy is currently expected to begin in November of this year, and the new school is expected to open in April of 2030, nearly 2 years later than the original August 2028 opening date set when the bid was approved. An article written by Garrett Baylor-Stell. Glasgow Times, on Monday the 20th of April. Lifestyle. Greece scraps the entry-exit system for all British passport holders. An article written by Katie Collier. A new entry-exit system, or EES, is in place across Europe, meaning the way that Brits travel has changed slightly, but Greece has announced that it will stop enforcing the new system. Under the new system, travellers must register their biometric information, which means having their fingerprints scanned and their photographs taken. They must also answer questions about their visit, such as whether they have somewhere to stay, enough money for their trip, and a return ticket. People visiting or leaving one of the 29 countries in Europe's Schengen area, mostly the countries of the EU plus Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway and Switzerland, usually have to do the new checks. However, Brits going to Greece will not have to follow this process amid the new rules. Eleni Skarveli, the director of the Greek National Tourism Organisation in the UK, has revealed that anyone with a British passport will be able to avoid the checks, the independent newspaper reports. She said that the move aims to ensure a smoother and more efficient arrival experience in Greece. Travellers can expect to spend less time waiting around at airports, as she said that the move is expected to significantly reduce waiting times and ease congestion at airports. Ms. Skarveli told the newspaper, practically this means that the entry process in place before the implementation of the EES will remain unchanged. A date when the change comes into effect has not yet been confirmed. Ahead of the launch of the new system, the Home Office urged travellers to expect longer wait times at border control, while Advantage Travel Partnership advised visitors to Southern Europe to allocate 4 hours for navigating the new system. EES registrations will last 3 years. Any subsequent border crossing within that period will require an individual's fingerprints and their photograph to be verified, which is expected to be quicker than when they were registered. An article written by Katie Collier. Glasgow Times, on Monday the 20th of April. Lifestyle. Kevin Bridges fronts a new BBC documentary on the soul of football. An article written by Aidan Maxwell. Kevin Bridges is to front a new BBC documentary exploring what football means to fans around the world ahead of the World Cup. In Kevin Bridges, In Search of the Beautiful Game, the Clydebank-born stand-up comedian will swap the stage for the terraces as he meets players, supporters and local voices in Scotland, Brazil and the USA to examine the modern state of the sport and while it still matters so deeply to people and communities. The film will see Mr. Bridges dig into how football shapes identity and a sense of belonging at a time when many fans feel increasingly disconnected from the game's money-dominated elite. Announcing the project, he said, "I've been a football fan for as long as I can remember. I was 11 years old when Scotland last qualified for the World Cup. A lot has changed about football since then. I've become a little disillusioned with where the game is headed. I'm excited to be setting out on this mission to see if the game still has a soul and that its beauty is not yet lost." The series will air ahead of the FIFA Men's World Cup, where Scotland is set to face Brazil on BBC One, BBC Scotland and the iPlayer. Kalpna Patel-Knight, the head of entertainment commissioning at the BBC, said, "Kevin Bridges is one of the UK's most beloved comedians, as well as a lifelong football obsessive. For the first time in 28 years, Scotland is back in the World Cup, and so Kevin's off on an international journey to explore the contemporary state of football, its cultural significance and enduring appeal, in the hope that he can bring home a few tips. We can't wait to bring Kevin's adventures to screen ahead of the BBC's coverage of the FIFA Men's World Cup this year." An article written by Aidan Maxwell. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 20th of April. More than 1,000 university staff are due to strike due to a pay dispute. An article written by Esther Tarnay. Over 1,100 Unite members at 5 Scottish universities are set to strike. Employees at the universities of Glasgow, Strathclyde, Napier and Heriot-Watt will take part in the latest round of 24-hour strike action on Friday in an escalating dispute over an imposed real terms pay cut. This comes after what they claim is successive poor pay awards and years of industrial unrest in the higher education sector. Previously, on the 10th of April, members at some of these universities took part in 24-hour action as part of the same dispute. The dispute is based on a 1.4% pay offer for 2025 to 2026 on the Scottish university workforce. With the retail price index inflation currently running at 3.6% and significant increases in inflation expected due to the war in Iran, this represents a massive real terms pay cut. Pay talks involving the joint trade unions and the Universities and Colleges Employers Association, impacting 138 higher education institutions across the UK, have already taken place for 2026 to 2027, with a further meeting scheduled for the 13th of May. Unite's General Secretary Sharon Graham said, "University workers deserve far better from higher education institutions. For years, they've had real-term pay cuts imposed on them, which is unacceptable. Inflation throughout this time has soared, and now workers are facing another cost of living crisis. Unite will fully support our higher education members. We won't tolerate them having to face attack upon attack on their jobs, pay and conditions." An article written by Esther Tarnay. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 20th of April. Scots want to have their say on energy needs. An article issued by the Glasgow Times news desk. A majority of Scots want to see the country use renewables to meet its energy needs, a new poll has found. A total of 55% of people said that Scotland should rely on renewables, such as wind, solar and hydropower, to meet its long-term energy security needs, with 17% saying that they should rely on fossil fuels, such as oil and gas. Meanwhile, 14% backed the use of uranium, the fuel used for nuclear power, for long-term energy security. The poll's findings were released as energy has become a key issue in the Holyrood election campaign, with parties including Labour and the Tories making clear their support for new nuclear power plants in Scotland. The SNP, which has been in power since 2007, is firmly opposed to the development of such plants. The poll of more than 2,000 adults carried out by Survation for independent renewable energy company Green Power also found that nuclear energy had the lowest score when it came to who people can trust to tell the truth about costs, pollution and safety. A total of 12% of those questioned said that they trusted the nuclear sector to do this, compared to 13% for the oil and gas sector and 33% for the renewable sector. With energy costs rising in the wake of the Gulf conflict, almost half of people thought renewables were the form of energy most likely to cut bills, with 18% saying that nuclear power could help bring down costs for consumers. Pete Roche of the Scottish Campaign to Resist the Atomic Menace said, "The poll demonstrates that Scots are not as gullible as the lobbyists and the pro-nuclear political parties seem to think. A renewable energy future is not only possible, but is the most supported and most trusted sector by far. Relying on a uranium-fuelled nuclear future is like jumping out of the oil and gas frying pan and into a nuclear fire. It makes no sense, and Scots seem to get that. A score of 14% for a uranium-fuelled future is quite miserable." An article issued by the Glasgow Times news desk.
From the Glasgow Times on Tuesday the 21st of April 2026, from the Lifestyle section. Lost video of 90s Glasgow includes famous Four Corners, and this article was written by Anne Fotheringham. It was loud, distinctive, and part of the soundtrack to Glasgow streets for decades. The cry of "Times, final times" was delivered by our newspaper vendors at locations around the city centre back when we were called the Evening Times. The vendors were more than newspaper sellers. They were tourist information booths, helpful city guides, entertainers, and part of a tradition that is sadly no more. In 1993, one of the sellers was captured in a video by Jim Rusk, then a student, now a freelance cameraman. When he put the footage online recently, it took social media by storm, and he has kindly shared it with the Glasgow Times as we celebrate our 150th anniversary. I filmed it on my very first video camera, says Jim, smiling. It's a piece of history now. The footage is striking. It captures a city in motion, shoppers, commuters, cars and buses at the famous Four Corners junction at Argyll Street and Union Street. Buses were orange in 1993 and Central Station's facade above the Heelan Man's umbrella, the railway bridge over Argyll Street where incomers to the city would shelter on arrival, was painted red. On the corner where Tim Hortons now sits, formerly a Dunkin' Donuts, a digital advertising screen blazed with the bold new Evening Times logo and some of our headlines. Come clean, Mr. Smith, and Tories plan to slash housing benefit. It also proudly announced our status as Newspaper of the Year. The screen included other adverts for Cats the Musical, Iron Brew, and Arnold Clark, and a plea to give blood. And in the background, throughout the short clip, you can hear the shouts of "Times, final times," as the city goes about its business. Jim was born in Rotten Row and his parents lived on Agnes Street in Kelvinside. The family moved to Wynford, where Jim still lives. He is currently documenting the demolition and regeneration of the area. Jim's career has taken him around the world. He worked in South Korea and was one of a team brought in by the V&A to create an archive of British designers, including Alexander McQueen. I love the places filmmaking takes you to, the variety of wild and wonderful locations, he says. But I wanted to do other things, and in 2017 I went back to college to study 3D design and model making. Now I work mainly in Edinburgh with model railway companies. The video was a spur-of-the-moment decision, he explains. I had just bought my camera when I filmed that, he says. It was a second-hand Sony, semi-professional video camera, and I just went out and about around the city. The Four Corners is such an iconic spot, full of vibrant movement. You can see how much Glasgow has changed. Lots more diesel cars on Argyll Street, which was two-way then, for one thing. He adds with a laugh, then the footage sat on a cassette on a shelf in my house for 30 years. It was only when he came to start digitising his old videos that Jim came across the Four Corners footage, complete with Evening Times vendor. I thought I'd put it on the Past Glasgow website on Facebook, and it got such a lovely response, he says, smiling. Film matters. You don't think about it at the time. I certainly didn't when I was making this video in 1993, but it becomes valuable later on. It's a piece of Glasgow history. And that article was written by Anne Fotheringham. From the Glasgow Times on Tuesday, the 21st of April 2026. From the lifestyle section. Meet the Kirkintilloch women who taught young prisoners how to dance. And this article was written by Anne Fotheringham. Amy Frail admits she felt like a deer in headlights on the first day she walked into her new job at a Scottish prison. I'd barely been out of college a few weeks. I hadn't had a proper boyfriend or a girls' holiday or even a full-time paycheck yet, she writes in her newly published book, The Prison Project. I was quiet at school with a small circle of friends. I'd had quite a shielded upbringing. She adds, confidence was key, and at first I had to fake it. Amy, who is from Kirkintilloch, was employed to teach hip-hop and contemporary dance to young offenders as part of their rehabilitation. She was 21 at the time, the same age as many of the young men she was supporting. It was daunting, she admits. My parents were worried. I was intimidated at first, definitely. I always knew I wanted to work in the community. I definitely see dance as a tool to help people, but this was a huge challenge. She pauses. I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did. Amy, now 29, has written a memoir about her experience, navigating tales of heartbreak and chaotic lives with moments of humour and joy. I started writing everything down because I didn't want to forget it, although I never considered publishing it until my gran read it and told me how much she enjoyed it, says Amy, smiling. My gran is great and always brutally honest, so the fact that she loved it so much planted a seed that maybe it really could be a book. The book, published by the Book Guild, also tackles issues such as trauma and so-called toxic masculinity highlighted in recent dramas like Netflix Adolescence and documentaries such as Louis Theroux's Inside the Manosphere. I was writing this long before the manosphere was being talked about openly, but toxic masculinity, the ways young men talk to and about women, are things I experienced and have written about in the book, says Amy. I was quite shocked by some of the things I heard. Our dance class was a way of helping to plant small seeds in their minds that talking like that was not acceptable. It was sobering, she agrees, to be in a room with young people roughly her age whose lives had taken very different paths. I was worried they wouldn't respect me, and at first there was some reticence to getting involved in a dance class, she says. But as time went on, they definitely saw me as an equal, and we built up trust. It is not about excusing their crimes, it is all to do with rehabilitation. Amy's love of dance began at high school. I was not one of those children who is in a tutu from the age of 2, she says with a laugh. I remember learning a bit about dance at a sports day at school, and it was around the time diversity had been on Britain's Got Talent and hip-hop was popular. I gave it a try and loved it. I thought the teacher was the coolest person I had ever met. I think there still are misconceptions around dance. I'd get the odd comment along the lines of, "Oh, what do you do all day? Is it just messing about in a leotard?" But I have seen firsthand the positive impact it can have on people. Amy's experience in the prison inspired her to change career, and she's now a primary school teacher. I want to keep working with young people, she says. I saw the difference you can make to someone's life just seeing them once a week, so imagine what you can do if you're there for them every day. Working in the prison was a huge challenge, but it has definitely taught me a lot. Hearing stories from the prisoners about their childhoods has made me see any child that I'll teach through a different lens. And that article was written by Anne Fotheringham. From the Glasgow Times on Tuesday, the 21st of April 2026, from the news section. Ducklings hatch at Bearsden Care Home, delighting residents. And this article was written by Beth Oliver. A group of ducklings has brought joy and energy to care home residents. The birds hatched at Beauclair Care Home in Bearsden as part of a springtime activity designed to encourage connection and curiosity. Several eggs were incubated on site, allowing residents to observe the entire process and follow each stage of their development. The presence of the ducklings encouraged gentle interaction, conversation, and a sense of wonder among residents who enjoyed naming the birds and learning about their care and early development. Beauclair Care Home said the project supports its broader commitment to nature-based activities that enrich residents' lives. Carolyn Whelan, home manager at Beauclair Care Home, said, "This has been such a special experience for everyone here. It's brought a real sense of excitement and togetherness For many of our residents, it has sparked fond memories and created new ones. Family visitors also appreciated the scheme, describing it as heartwarming and a beautiful idea. The project was organised in partnership with Incredible Eggs, a group focused on preserving biodiversity among heritage poultry breeds and promoting high welfare, non-intensive farming. Some of the breeds supported by Incredible Eggs are listed as at risk by the Rare Breeds Survival Trust. And that article was written by Beth Oliver. From the Glasgow Times on Tuesday, the 21st of April 2026, from the news section. Murray's Women's Service in Glasgow faces closure after 60 years, and this article was written by Amy Miles. A vital women's service that has supported women in Glasgow for 60 years is now under threat of closure due to a funding crisis. Murray's Women's Service supports survivors of gender-based violence and abuse, helping them regain control of their lives and move forward safely and confidently. The service offers a confidential assessment to understand each woman's individual needs and provides emotional support, safety planning, coping strategies, and help with housing or tenancy issues. Ongoing support focuses on building lasting resilience and independence. The team behind the service said, "At the heart of our service is a commitment to walking alongside you with respect, compassion, and empowerment, because every woman deserves to thrive." Now that support is in danger of disappearing. The service needs to raise £60,000 to remain open for the next 10 months and is appealing to the public for donations. The fundraiser reads, "Without your help, women in Glasgow and surrounding will lose access to life-saving support when they need it most. For many, Murray's Initiative Women's Service is that place, but our vital service is now under threat. Without immediate funding, this service will close before new funding becomes available in 2027, leaving many women without support." The team highlighted the growing need for their services, pointing to rising rates of gender-based violence in the area. They said, "Right now in Glasgow, gender-based violence is rising sharply. Domestic abuse up 41%, rape up 41%, sexual assault up 28%. Behind these very real statistics is a real person who needs somewhere safe to turn." Donors are reassured that any excess funds raised will continue to support the broader work of Murray's Initiative, which helps vulnerable individuals and communities across the region. The spokesperson said, "We know times are tough and money is tight, but any amount will make a difference. Your donation will help keep our service open and women safe. Murray's Initiative is a registered charity and has served the people of Glasgow and the surrounding areas for the last 60 years. So far, the Give As You Live fundraiser has raised £1,280. And that article was written by Amy Miles. From the Glasgow Times on Tuesday, the 21st of April 2026, from the news section. Scottish Labour wants to overhaul Scotland's skills system, and this article was written by Morgan Carmichael. Scottish Labour wants to overhaul Scotland's out-of-date skills system by linking schools and workplaces together. The party has pledged plans to make sure every pupil has access to skills and careers advice and prepare young people for modern industries and growing sectors. Scottish Labour leader Anas Sarwar said, "For too many young people, the promise of a good future is being held back by a skills system that is out of date and out of touch. Not content just to downgrade the exam results of working class children, the SNP is now failing to prepare young people for the world of work. Analog John and the SNP are out of ideas, and it means young people are losing out on opportunity, employers are struggling to recruit, and Scotland is paying the price." The party manifesto pledges a Skills for Schools programme linking every school with local workplaces, industry work placements and certified work experience for every secondary school pupil, and a digital skills passport to record the experience. Scottish Labour would also introduce Scottish industry standards to connect school subjects to career pathways, and support colleges and universities to offer more skills-based modules and industrial placements. Sarwar continued, "I'm standing to fix the mess, get the basics right and build a better future for Scotland. A Scottish Labour government I lead will make sure every young person gets proper skills and careers advice, meaningful work experience, stronger links to local employers, and the digital skills they need for the modern economy. We will link schools and workplaces, help young people see a future for themselves here in Scotland, and make sure education opens doors instead of closing them. That is how we create opportunities for the next generation and deliver the skills system Scotland needs." The SNP has been approached for comment. It comes after Sarwar previously said that a vote for Scottish Labour is not an endorsement of Keir Starmer. Sarwar made the comments on Monday as Sir Keir Starmer was set to face MPs over the ongoing scandal surrounding the vetting of former US Ambassador Peter Mandelson. The Scottish Labour leader in February called for Sir Keir to quit, and speaking to the STUC Congress in Dundee on Monday, said there had been too many mistakes made by the UK government. He added, "I know that people have frustrations and disappointments, and I share those. There are many good things, but also too many mistakes. So let me be clear. A vote for Scottish Labour in this election is not an endorsement of Sir Keir Starmer. It's about who is First Minister." And that article was written by Morgan Carmichael.
This is from the Glasgow Times on the 22nd of April 2026, from the news section, and the headline reads, "Father and son drive from Dumbarton to Lisbon dressed as pirates." This article is by Beth Oliver. A father and son duo are hitting the open road in pirate costumes for a 2,000-mile rally challenge. Ian Marshall and his son Finlay will drive from Dumbarton to Lisbon in an old Ford Banger rally car, dressed as Pirates of the Caribbean, to raise funds for Maggie's cancer charity. The father and son team, who have had the rally drive on their bucket list for many years, have expressed their delight at the opportunity to make it a reality. Speaking about the chance to spend such quality time with his son, Ian Marshall, of William Marshall and Son Limited, said, "There's no better way to do it side by side than an old banger, whilst raising much needed funds for people affected by cancer and those who love them. Over many years in business, I have known so many local people who have faced cancer and treatment, and so, when this opportunity presented itself to raise money for a beautiful cancer centre not too far from my home, it felt like the perfect chance to help support a charity which provides such valuable support." The rally route will take the pair from Dumbarton through the UK, northern France and Spain, before reaching Portugal. Ahead of the trip, the pair visited Maggie's Centre in Glasgow, which is located on the grounds of the Beatson West of Scotland Cancer Centre. Finlay Marshall, 29, said, "It's all about having fun, challenging ourselves, and the motor to travel long distances over 6 nights, and raising money for Maggie's. It was a real pleasure to visit Maggie's Centre, and see and hear some of the incredible support offered to people with cancer. This will be the forefront in our minds as we journey land and sea. Maggie's offers free specialist cancer support to people across the west of Scotland. Kerry Craig, centre head at Maggie's Glasgow, said, Maggie's relies entirely on voluntary donations from individuals and the local community to enable a professional team to be able to provide specialist cancer support, psychological support, and benefits advice for everyone who needs it. We are very grateful to Ian and Finlay for embracing this crazy challenge and helping support us by raising much needed funds. To support Ian and Finlay's challenge or follow their journey, visit www.justgiving.com/page/Glasgow 2 Lisbon Charity Rally. This article was by Beth Oliver. This is from the Glasgow Times on the 22nd of April 2026, from the news section, and the headline reads, FBI charges Chinese Glasgow uni student for taking US military photos. This article is by Amy Miles. A Glasgow student from China has been charged after allegedly taking photos of US military planes in Nebraska during a multi-state road trip. Tianrui Liang, 21, who studies aeronautical engineering at the University of Glasgow, was arrested on April 7th at a New York airport as he attempted to board a flight to Glasgow via Frankfurt, the FBI said in a court filing. We previously reported that Mr. Liang is accused of photographing sensitive aircraft at Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska, including an RC-135 reconnaissance plane and an E-4B Doomsday plane, an airborne command centre designed for use by the President and military officials during national emergencies. The FBI stated that under US law, it is illegal to photograph or sketch defence installations without authorisation. Mr. Liang told investigators that, while he believed it was legal to photograph the sky, he was aware that taking pictures of grounded military aircraft was prohibited. He said the photos were intended for his personal collection. Liang has not yet appeared in federal court in Omaha. Mr. Liang's lawyer, Jeff Thomas, declined to comment, reports her sister title, The Herald. The FBI said Mr. Liang entered the US from Canada in late March after flying to Vancouver and meeting a friend who studies in New York. He then drove alone to Ellsworth Air Force Base in South Dakota. A witness reported seeing a man in a vehicle near the Nebraska base with a camera equipped with a telescopic lens as an aircraft sat on the runway. The FBI also said Mr. Liang expressed interest in visiting Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma. Mr. Liang is charged under Title 18 of the US Code, Section 795, which prohibits the unauthorised photographing, sketching, drawing, or mapping of vital military and naval installations or equipment. A spokesman for the university said, "We do not comment on ongoing police matters or individual students." The base in Nebraska is home to the 55th Wing, the largest unit in the US Air Force's Air Combat Command. This article was by Amy Miles. This is from the Glasgow Times on the 22nd of April 2026, from the news section, and the headline reads, Man due in court charged in connection with death of Glasgow woman. This article is by Amy Miles. A man is due in court today, charged in connection with the death of 82-year-old Elizabeth Colligan. Ms Colligan was found injured on Cardowan Road in Glasgow around 4:20 a.m. on Saturday, April 18th. Emergency services attended the scene, but she was pronounced dead at the scene. A 30-year-old man has been arrested and charged in connection with her death and is expected to appear at Glasgow Sheriff Court on Wednesday, April 22nd. Detective Chief Inspector David Lamont said, "Our thoughts remain with Elizabeth's family and friends during this very difficult time. We would like to thank the local community for their support while our investigation has been ongoing." We reported at the start of the week that heartbreaking tributes had been left to Elizabeth, an 82-year-old woman who was tragically murdered in Glasgow's East End. The Glasgow Times understands that Elizabeth served the community as all would probably do. Flowers were left at the scene, and many more mourners are taken to social media to share their devastation at the news. One person wrote, "Rest easy, Betty. You were the best wee lollipop woman there was. Thinking of the family at this awful time. Another said, so sad. Hope the police get who did this to this poor woman. Our thoughts were with her family. Rest in peace. A third commented, God bless Betty, cracking woman, thoughts are with your family. Others described her as a lovely wee lady who didn't deserve that. This article was by Amy Miles. This is from the Glasgow Times on the 22nd of April 2026 from the news section, and the headline reads, Manhunt underway for masked thug after robbery in Paisley. This article is by Aidan MacDonald. A manhunt is underway for a masked thug after a robbery in Paisley. The incident happened around 9:15 p.m. on Tuesday, April 21st, at a premises on Neilston Road. A 3-figure sum of cash was taken. There were no reports of any injuries. The suspect is described as a man, around 5 feet 5 inches tall, around 20 to 30 years old, and of slim build. He was wearing black clothing and a face covering. He made off along Neilston Road toward Espedale Street. Detective Sergeant Fraser Gunn said, Inquiries are ongoing and we are appealing to anyone who witnessed the incident to contact us. We'd also ask anyone with private CCTV or dashcam footage which could assist our inquiries to come forward. Anyone with information is asked to contact Police Scotland on 101, quoting incident 3391 of Tuesday, 21st of April 2026. Alternatively, Crime Stoppers can be contacted anonymously on 0800 555 111. This article was by Aidan MacDonald.
That concludes this week's edition of the Glasgow Times Podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels at Q and Review and to tell your friends about our service.